gonna throw. One-on-one, Davis has it. Touchdown! Carolina wins! Carolina is the Coastal Division champion! Javonte Williams to the left of Howell. He'll send him out into the flat right side. Howell looking, standing tall, lets it go, man there! Touchdown! Touchdown, Carolina! The pistol, Jackson behind him. Hands off to Jackson, he tried a jump pass, and it's intercepted! Surratt intercepts it! Holy cow, Carolina's gonna win! And off to Javonte Williams again, pops it to the left. Javonte leaps over a man, crosses the 50, trucks over a defender, spins by another. Goodness gracious, he's down to about the 15, and he did absolutely everything in one carry.
Here's the shotgun snap to Aguilar. Drops back, pressure coming, Aguilar floats it up, incomplete! No flags! Head on back up the mountain! Carolina wins it in double overtime! Loftus, out of the shotgun, throws to the end zone, incomplete! Incomplete! The bell belongs to us! Carolina wins it! 47-45 in double overtime!
Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio is going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog podcast, coming at you on a Wednesday night. I don't even know what day of the week it is. I'm so confused at this point. We are 5 days away from the start of Carolina's season as they get ready to take on the TCU Horned Frogs on Monday night in Kenan Stadium. We will, of course, be there, and we will now be seeing Gio Lopez as the starting quarterback for the Tar Heels. We're going to talk all about that here tonight, what it ultimately means for Carolina that they are going with Gio Lopez, and where we think this could go this season for Carolina with him at the helm. So let's just jump straight into it. When you hear that Gio Lopez is the starting quarterback for Carolina, you think what, Josh Marlowe?
I think $2.1 million invested has finally earned its rightful spot, which is in usually you say under center, but in modern football, it's in the shotgun as the starting quarterback for Carolina. This was always, I think, the expectation upon his transfer into the program back during the spring transfer window. You knew with Belichick and the culture he's trying to set, he was going to have to go out there and earn it. And I do think that, not that they didn't give Max Johnson a legitimate chance to win the job, but I think this was basically a competition that was designed to be over probably by this point of the preseason of training camp, where once they got into full-blown TCU prep, they knew who their starter is, and that's Gio Lopez. And then this is a guy that I think, when you go back to the night that he committed, when Carolina was really going after him, maybe we were puzzled just because we didn't understand why Carolina was going to get a quarterback after the way they went after Bryce Baker once Belichick was hired and how important he was in terms of as a recruit. But this is a guy that the more that, we've got a chance to know him through the come up or meeting with the media, the more that we've got to watch his film, I think it's really easy to get excited about. And a guy that I do think is poised to have a big season. He was a breakout player for me, as you heard on the last edition of the podcast. And I'm really excited to see what he can do in Freddie Kitchens' offense. And so this was always the expectation upon him transferring in. And I just can't wait to see what Gio Lopez looks like in Carolina Blue.
Yeah, I think it really should bring about excitement for Tar Heel fans because you went out and got this guy out of the transfer portal for a reason. You believe that he is a guy that's going to be able to take your offense to the next level, something that, maybe Bryce Baker wasn't going to be able to do necessarily this year, and Max Johnson maybe wasn't going to be able to do ever because that's just how limited he is as a quarterback, not to mention how limited he is now that he's coming off of the leg injury. I don't ever think it was really a serious competition. I think it was more along the lines of, we're just trying to make sure that that in order to come in here and win and take this job, you're going to have some sort of competition to be able to beat out, because everybody on the roster is having to do that. No one was guaranteed their spot this year for Carolina, even though we said with certain guys like Price Yates, like Andrew Simpson, those guys are guaranteed to be starters. Everybody had to earn those starting spots. That's what Bill Belichick and this staff wanted. And I think that Gio Lopez went out there and did that. By all indications, he looked really good, from the small times that the media really got to see him in action. Now, granted, none of that was in team drills or anything like that. So we'll just have to wait and see, if there are any sort of reviews that come out about that before we get, our first look on Monday night against TCU. But I would doubt that you're probably going to see anything that comes out about that. It's really just going to be, you got to trust this coaching staff, that they went out and found a guy that has, a really high ceiling, can take this offense to another level. And I think this is certainly what you're going to be able to see this year for Carolina. Is, I think, early on out of the gate, there might be some moments where this offense stumbles and bumbles, and maybe isn't the group that we think it's going to be as the year goes along. I think they will have some growing pains at times, because this is an offense that is new. Freddie Kitchens is a guy that has not been a play caller at the college level before. And so there are going to be some things that are going to be a little bit different for some of these guys to learn. There will be a lot of under center stuff. That's going to be something that Gio Lopez is going to have to adjust to while he is taking on that starting job. So we'll see how quickly he picks up on that stuff. To me, this seems like a smart kid, a guy that, has all the talent in the world in terms of, the intangibles that you need to have. It feels like he's got everything skill set wise that you need to have. And that's why I have confidence in him going into the opener. To me, when I watched him, we talked about it back when he committed to Carolina. I really like the arm strength. I think that is something that, especially at his size, he is a smaller quarterback, but is sort of thicker in frame. But still, you want to make sure that he's got the right arm strength that you need to be able to get the ball downfield. I think he's got plenty of arm strength. I don't think that's going to be an issue that Carolina is going to run into at all with him. We've seen it, in his days at South Alabama. Now, I don't know if guys will be running nearly as open as they were at South Alabama during times last year because of how good that offense was. But you're hoping that Carolina can scheme some of these guys open and give him a chance to hit some of those deep passes. Really like his accuracy. That's a thing that is very important, especially you go back a couple of years ago, not even a couple of years ago. It feels like a couple of years ago. You go back to last offseason, believe it or not, when when Connor Harrell was battling for the starting job, and they were talking about, his struggles that he was having. And a lot of it was the accuracy side of things. This is not a worry that you're going to have with Gio Lopez. In his first year as a true freshman back in 2023, in the limited amount of games that he played, he was 41 of 61. That's a 67.2% completion rate. You go to last year with, pretty much a full season of started 11 of the team's 12 games. He was 206 of 312. That's a 66% clip completion-wise. So really, really accurate quarterback, a guy that I think is going to be able to thrive. But again, when you look at it, yards per attempt, he was, it was 8.2. So it wasn't like this was a guy that was just dumping down a lot of passes, and that was how he was. He ended up racking up such a high completion percentage. No, this is a guy that was pushing the ball downfield and was fairly accurate. And then you talk about his legs, the mobility that he brings to the table. A lot of this screams successful quarterback at this level. It's just about him adjusting to the level of football where you're going to have to play Power 4 school after Power 4 school at one point during the schedule.
Yeah, I think his mobility, will be a big part of what the offense looks like on Monday night against TCU. And as this offense tries to find an identity, and, I listened to Bill Belichick's press conference from earlier today, and, something that he did at the NFL level where the offense is morphed from week to week. He's bringing that same mindset, that same philosophy to the college level. So there will be weeks where Carolina's game plan may be, hey, we're going to come out here and be more heavy on the run game. There might be a game or two, though, when they identify the weakness of the opponent, where they feel like the best way to attack him is through the air. And I think he offers you the best to play that style of football from a week in, week out standpoint, because you mentioned the accuracy while throwing the football downfield. He doesn't turn the football over. So, and I think that's a big deal for Belichick. And that probably would have been Max Johnson's way to make it a legitimate competition, was just the fact that he didn't turn the ball over during his time at LSU, during his time at A&M. Of course, we only got a half of him at Carolina, but, he did protect the football at his 2 previous stops. But, Gio Lopez has done it so far his career. You expect him to do that as well. And the deep ball, I think, is going to be – I think that was maybe the biggest difference maker for where Carolina's offense was a year ago to where it's going to be this year. He can get the football down the field. And now you got to get receivers that can get open, and I think they have those guys on the roster. But it doesn't matter if guys get open if the football can't get to them. And he throws, effortless is maybe giving it too high praise. It's a fluid throwing motion, man. Like, the ball looks pretty coming out of his hands. He's got the arm strength there to really make the throws you need him to make at the power conference level. And so, I think that this will, he's going to be able to cement himself as Carolina's starter. I do not think we'll have to have a debate should they look to Max Johnson at any point in the year. And I think he'll be a player as much as anybody on the roster that'll get better from week to week, from game to game, from month to month. And I think it's why Carolina is going to be poised to have a real successful season, because as the schedule maybe lightens up at the end of the year, I think he'll be playing his best football, and Carolina can take advantage of that, and he can go out there and win some games that Carolina has lost in recent years.
Yeah, I don't think that you have to worry about him struggling to the point where they're going to have to put in Max Johnson. The thing that you wonder with him is the way that he plays, now transitioning to the Power 4 level. Is he going to be a guy that gets worn down as the season goes along, maybe gets banged up, and you have to put Max Johnson in there for a game or so? And I think, and I don't know if, I speak for you, I believe that Max Johnson is probably good enough to get you through a game or two at the Power 4 level. I mean, there's a reason why he was successful enough at doing that at LSU and Texas A&M. I think the thing that we've learned with him is that you don't necessarily want him as your long-term starter. I don't think he really brings much upside when it comes to that. So I think that Gio Lopez is going to be the guy for the majority of the season unless there is an injury. To me, if there's no injury, he's the guy the whole season. And I really do think that when you look at it, there is potential for this to be a top 5 quarterback in the ACC this year. I think that's on the table for Carolina to have one of those guys again. Now, do I think that he's a guy that next year is probably going to be the preseason player of the year in the conference? Maybe not that level. But, look, if you see him, towards the middle of this conference, even if he's having just an average year, similar numbers to what he put up at South Alabama, then I would think that he's got Carolina in a position to be pretty successful. I think the fact that he doesn't turn the ball over, as you mentioned, is huge. So to me, is that kind of the range of numbers that you're looking for him to put up? You look at last year, 66% completions, 2,559 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, ran for 463 and 7 touchdowns. I think, honestly, most people could probably live with that. You might want a little bit more in the passing game from him, but I think for the most part, most people could live with that type of production this year for Carolina, especially if they're able to run the ball successfully.
Yeah, I think even if that's the floor production, I think that translates to 8 wins for Carolina. But as I mentioned last night when I listed him as a breakout player, I think there's 3,500 yards of total offense in his bag, with 30-plus touchdowns to be accounted for passing and throwing. And if he does that, I think that really puts Carolina in a position to win the amount of games I predicted them to win last night, which of course I have them going 10-2. But I think there will be more passing numbers just because he'll probably play in a shootout or two more than he played at South Alabama. He's got, I think, more deeper pass catching weapons at his disposal. And I do think, Freddie Kitchens will not be afraid to let him sling it because he knows he's not going to turn it over. And so, I think Carolina's going to want to run the football, and that's going to be, I think, the backbone of what this offense is. But I don't think they'll go into games scared of Gio Lopez if he has to throw it 30, 35 times. And I think that's a good spot to be in with a guy that transferred into the program as late as he did. So I think, the floor is basically reproducing the production that he put up last year for the Jaguars. I think he's going to take a massive step in the right direction. And depending on what the quarterback situation looks like in the ACC next year, where, Clay Cudlick's going to be in the NFL, Carson Beck, you'd imagine moves on from Miami. He could be the best quarterback in the country or in the conference this time next year. So I think that's what's exciting is that I think you feel like unless he just goes nuclear, you've got 2 years with him in your program. And he could really be the guy that sets the program up to take that next step under Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I mean, you got at least 2 years with him. You could possibly have 3 with him because he is a sophomore. So this is a guy that could be here for a while. I think, asking him to be the best quarterback next year going into the season, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's asking a little bit too much. I feel like that's not the craziest thing to be asking of him this year. I mean, if he takes the type of leap that we think he's going to be able to take, because, as you mentioned, I think one thing that really needs to be accounted for here is that he is going to have better skill position players around him. He's going to have a better running game that's going to open up the passing game, and he's going to have better skill position talent out there at wide receiver, at tight end. Even though tight end's an area where Carolina has question marks, it's still going to be better than what he had at South Alabama this past year. And so it should allow him to succeed, expand upon those numbers. I mean, for me, if you could get me into, that 23, 25 touchdown range, maybe get close to 3,000 yards passing, I think then you probably feel really comfortable with the type of quarterback play that you're getting from Gio Lopez. And I expect him to run the ball a little bit better, even at Carolina, behind, a better offensive line, or one that we're hoping is going to be a better offensive line. I'm expecting a similar season to what we saw from Sam Howell back in 2021. Now, I'm hoping for much more success than we got in 2021 under Sam. Just 6 wins that season. But I would expect similar type of play from him because that's the type of player that he reminds me of is Sam. The way that he played that year where he was just running through guys, I think that's how Gio Lopez is built. That's certainly something that I think you're going to see about his game, something that to some people may be a little bit frustrating because you'll want him to slide, not take nearly as many hits. But I just don't think that's the type of player that he is. So I think you'll see that element of his game too. But yeah, I think as the season goes along, you'll see him start to progress as a passer. Things will slow down a little bit for him, unlike it might be for him right out of the gate when he's playing TCU, even in the game against Central Florida, and then especially in that game against Clemson. I think when you get to the back half of that schedule, that's really where you're going to see him settle into a rhythm and really have a strong year. Let's talk about TCU from his perspective real quick before we get out of here. When it comes to the TCU game, what are your expectations for him going into this game? Because this one, starting off, against a Power 4 school, last year, the only Power 4 school that he ended up facing was LSU. Certainly wasn't his best performance, but that is certainly a team that matched up a lot better against South Alabama than maybe TCU will match up against Carolina. Yeah,
look, it's going to be a challenge. The Horned Frogs are a team that's more than capable of winning the Big 12 this year. And a lot of it is because of what they offer offensively. I think people don't realize just how good of a quarterback Josh Hoover was and is last year. He set the single season passing yard mark for that TCU program. And they've had really good quarterback play for the last 10 to 15 years. It will be a step up in competition, but that's just part of it. But I think he's a guy that has invited that challenge. He welcomed that challenge, knew that was part of it when Carolina made it a point to go after him in the spring transfer window. I do think, though, it'll be best for him just with everything that's going to go into Monday night, right? Where there's just going to be an energy, a buzz that no one on that field has ever felt before in their lives. They're going to be playing with such an adrenaline rush that, I think if Carolina can maybe run the ball and ease him into the game, I think that really bodes well for him because I think he's going to be so jacked up. First career start as a Tar Heel. You're playing on Monday night. The entire football world is going to be watching, not just the college world. The NFL world will be watching what Bill Belichick does in his debut at the college game. I think it's really important that Carolina can kind of lean on its run game and the defense, does not get exposed because I think worst case scenario is he gets caught in a track meet having to go throw for throw with a quarterback that can make a bunch of good throws. And so, I don't want to say that I'm not confident that he can do that because I have all the confidence in the world in him. But we're looking at this from the best case scenario. I think if Carolina can kind of ease him in and maybe ask him to make 3 to 5 throws as opposed to maybe 7 to 10 throws, I think that bodes well. But I think he'll put up a performance that'll have us excited about the future, whether Carolina comes away victorious or suffers an early season defeat.
Yeah, I think the thing that's key for Carolina in this game, and we'll talk about it tomorrow night when we're previewing this game, is they got to be able to run the ball. And I think part of that is being able to run your quarterback. We've talked about it before that especially with mobile quarterbacks like him, guys that succeed in the running game, that really seems to be something that gets them going when you lean on them early in the game with their legs and say, you know what, we're going to give you a few carries on the ground to sort of settle yourself into the game. It almost seems to get those guys a little jacked up and gets them, into the right mindset and ready to go for the rest of the game. So I think that's certainly something you would like to see from Carolina right out of the gate is let's run Gio Lopez a little bit. Not saying you got to run him into the ground, but let's use him with these running backs to go up against a rushing defense. Rather, that last year for TCU allowed 160.5 yards a game. I mean, look, TCU's defense was pretty good last year, especially against the pass, one of the better ones in the entire country, allowing just 185 yards a game through the air. But it's one of those groups that you can attack on the ground. And so if I'm Carolina, that's my plan going into this game. And that's the way to really settle your young quarterback into the game. And then the most important thing for him in this one is just don't turn the ball over. Yeah. Don't give TCU these extra opportunities because they're going to have enough opportunities with this offense that should be one of the better offenses, especially early in the year in the Big 12 because of everything that returns. Don't let them settle into the game, get these extra opportunities that could come from turnovers and really race out to a big lead because playing from behind definitely should not be the plan for Carolina. You want to be in a close game or you want to be leading where you're controlling everything that's going on for the Tar Heels. So I think that's really the main thing that you want to see from Carolina in this game early on is establish that run game, do it with your quarterback as well, and let him settle himself into the game where he can get comfortable making some of those throws. I mean, the other thing is you got to realize not a lot of experienced guys out there at receiver either. So even though I think there's a lot of talent at that position, it's a lot of guys that haven't played significant snaps in big games. So that's another way, that's another reason why running the football makes a lot of sense early in this game for Carolina. I'll be interested to see if they choose to do that in this matchup against TCU because that should be one of the keys to success. as you heard right there, we will be back tomorrow doing an edition of the podcast where we will preview the game against TCU for you guys. I know it's a little bit early in the week, but we want to get that out there for you guys so that you guys can be prepared for game day. Of course, if you're driving to Kenan Stadium on Monday, turn on the podcast, man, whether it's on Facebook, on YouTube. I would suggest, YouTube probably the best place to do that if you're throwing it on the road. Lot simpler to throw a YouTube video on than scroll through Facebook to try to bring it up, or Twitter. So I think YouTube's probably the best place to do that, or just listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We'll have that up there for you guys. The preview again tomorrow night should be planning it around 8:00. So make sure that you guys are there for that edition of the podcast. That'll be an exciting one, our first one of the year, and we will be debuting a couple of new elements, a new open. I think that's certainly something that you guys are going to enjoy, and a new background. So we will be debuting a lot of different stuff for you guys tomorrow night. That should be really exciting to get the season kicked off. You can see right there, Josh is wearing the new T-shirts that we got as well. So that's something that is really exciting that we're going to be wearing around this year for you guys. So if you see us at the game, on Monday, make sure you come up to us. Neither one of us, I think, will be wearing that shirt. I've already worn that shirt this week, and I would assume you're not going to throw that back on. We'll probably be in jerseys, but come up to us, say what's up at the game. We would greatly appreciate that, knowing that you're out there watching and listening to us. So, any other major stuff that's going on with Carolina football, make sure you're keeping up with the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Of course, we will have you covered on the podcast if something breaking news worthy comes through or anything like that. But that is where you will have everything that you need to know for the TCU matchup. We'll have the preview up there for you guys. Definitely going to be plenty of stuff in that preview, team breakdowns, team stat breakdowns. The injury report will be in there as well. And remember, this year it's a little bit different. They are required to put out injury reports multiple days before the game, and then then the day of the game, they also are required to put out an injury report. So we'll have the up-to-date injury stuff for you guys. That's one of the things about college sports being involved in betting. We get to know all this kind of stuff. So make sure that you guys are keeping up with with that article for all of the latest. And of course, I'll be tweeting out and posting any news for you guys that does come out as we get closer to kickoff. After the game is over, we will be recapping it on the website for you. That one will probably be up Tuesday because, we play Monday night. It's going to be pretty late. So it might be up on the website late Monday night. It really just depends on how fast I can write on the way back home. But it won't be shared until Tuesday for you guys to read it and consume it. So keep an eye out for that on Tuesday. And then the recap edition of the podcast, hopefully we can do that on Tuesday. If not, it'll be probably Wednesday of next week. Really just depends on what our schedules look like, because that is going to be a real crazy turnaround for us to be up. Especially Josh, who does the morning show, to be up, ready to go on Tuesday for work after coming back from the game on Monday. But we'll keep you up to date on everything that you need to know for that recap edition of the podcast. Basketball side of things relatively quiet right now, especially, during this time right here when Carolina football really takes center stage for a minute. But we'll see if there is any other news that does trickle out. If Luka Bogovac does get cleared by the NCAA, we'll, of course, have that news for you as well. And then we'll be back next week talking on the Four Corners podcast, doing the What If series for you guys. So make sure you check that out. Same places that you watch this podcast is where you can get that podcast. Again, hit that YouTube page hard, guys. We are pushing that right now to go there and subscribe. Even if you don't watch the videos on YouTube, we want you to go in there and subscribe. That would really help us as we continue to make that push to try to get that page generating some more views and, some more subscriptions. So that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. I want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.